the studio this morning, thinking about coming into these new paintings again, I actually had quite a feeling of nervousness and apprehension, and I was trying to figure out why this is. And I think it's because when you're coming back to this part, so if you've ever felt this when you're at the beginning and you don't know what's coming, it's because you've gone right back into that beginner mindset again, if you like. And what really sunk into place for me today was the reason why that's so hard is because usually you start new paintings when you have finished and completed another group of work. And by its very definition, when you've finished a group of work, you have resolved it. There's colour nuance, there's structure, there's all the things that you personally find beautiful about making a painting or making a piece of work has finished. You've completed it, you've done it. And then you come back and you're in this sort of ugly, awkward stage where you don't really know where it's going. Is this painting down here on the floor that started off as a bit landscape, is it actually going to turn out into a landscape that's got feeling and emotion and a sense of place? Are these more abstract forms going to turn into an abstract that actually has a message? And I don't know exactly what that is when I begin a painting. So I might be recording these for you. I'm not entirely sure yet because it feels awkward. It feels difficult when you're at this stage. And one of the things that really helps me to get through it is just to keep reminding myself that this is just the beginning. These do not have to be perfect. So that's my thought for the day, the In the Studio painting thought for the day. I hope it was helpful. You can find me over on Instagram at Alice Sheridan Studio, or you can see more of the finished work at my website, alicesheridan.com, and there will be some new work. The finished work, not these, is coming soon, later in April. So sign up for the newsletter if you would like to see those, and I look forward to sharing a bit more about where these lead. So I like some of these transition spaces. I like the way this mark is bleeding. I have deliberately started to collage in areas which have got graphics and text and different colour. This is actually from an old palette piece, but I just wanted to add something really quickly to remind me. I have this tendency to stick with blues for dark, so reminding me that there are actually other deep, rich, dark dual colours that I can use when I want something dark and rich. But I'm also really enjoying the fact that painting wet in wet, so within these kind of transition spaces, as you go through all these different parts of the lights and the neutrals, when they are mixed wet in wet, how it actually gives a nice soft texture really to the painting. And this is really raw. This is messy, it's dirty, it's rough, it's not really considered. This is just pure instinct. I think all four of these probably took me about 40 minutes at this stage. So there really isn't, this is just simply getting something down. But within that, you can also see how, in terms of composition, I am making sure that I'm still leaving a little bit of space. I'm not filling it up. I'm giving it a little bit of breathing room with each painting, but with a little bit of a different structure. So this one here that has got these kind of sections at the top, that's something that's new and a bit different for me. And then at the end, we went back to one that's a little bit more kind of landscape in form and really much rougher. So, you know, there are things that I can respond to in all of these. The colour is too homogeneous, so next time I'm going to be breaking that up a bit, going to be adding something more. So although they start off very similar, and these were the ones that I did before, so again, same colour palette, but more landscape based, just in terms of the way that they're formed. They clearly have a sense of sky to them. Whether that will stay or not, I don't know. Something rather lovely about the light coming through in that one, isn't there? And that was just using the idea of this orange as a ground. So I don't really know yet. And although, like I say, it makes me feel a little bit apprehensive, it's also quite exciting. That's why we do it. So it's the end of the day. As always, sometimes you have days where you don't feel like you've got very far. My hands tell a different story. And when I look back at where the paintings were this morning, I can see that I have moved them on. So I will show you. But I think it's a really interesting thing. I'm not very good usually at keeping a record of the process. So I always think it would be a fantastic idea to keep, you know, this is this painting, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. The reality is that when you're in the process of making, things often happen too fast to keep track of that. But it is an interesting thing to be able to do, to see how you've actually shifted things during the course of a painting session. So I will show you now where I've got to on these and what I'm liking about them. Again, if we think back to the idea of intention and what it is you want to create your work, I don't know if I have that at the start, other than my intention is to push my way of working. It feels to me like a painting is the end result of a whole series of decisions that you make. And I suppose that's what I'm interested in, is where those decisions lead you. So there are some things about these paintings that I like. They're still a long way off from being done. So let me show you. So here they are, and I think I have rehung these in the order that they were on the wall this morning, just so that you can see what's changed. This one was the other way up this morning. Anyway, here they are. They're still what I call quite clumsy. They're still finding their places. So let's think instead, if we're not talking about a finished painting anywhere near, we're talking about finding that positioning within a painting. So this one is the one that was more landscapey. It's at the moment, it's going to stay that way. Got a little bit of a centerline horizon, which is a trap that I often fill into. But there are ways that I think I can break that up later. I suppose what I'm trying to do here is to push my use of colours into things that I don't normally do. So this really dark burgundy I don't really use. This lilac-y colour I don't really use. Green I haven't used a lot recently. So this kind of combination of colours is something that's not familiar to me, and as a result I'm having to kind of push them around a bit to find the places. I want to work wet in wet, and yes, that is messy. It can look really scrappy, but it's easy to harmonise it afterwards, and it's harder to get this looseness if you don't have it in these early stages. You really, if you want to have your paintings to have a feeling of kind of exuberance and looseness, you've got to build that in from the start, because it's really hard to put that onto a painting which is really delicate and everything has been worked out beautifully. So this roughness, this kind of, you know, moving quickly is something that feels to me, it's helpful to me anyway, to keep it in at these early stages. So yeah, it looks a mess if you pull in, but if you pull back, you can see that there's a little bit more structure to it. And I'm trying to think about sort of grouping some of the colours and having areas so that this is maybe a warmer area, and this is going to be this sort of cool lilac and green on this side. So we'll see. I possibly need a little bit more reference material for that, but that one is quite landscapey. This one at the moment is kind of the trouble child. This is the naughty one. It feels less resolved, it feels lumpy, but what I know is that often it's these kind of paintings that are your pivot paintings, I call them. They push you in new directions, and because you don't care about them so much, because you don't like them, it can really change things. So what do I like about this? I like this transition. I said this morning when this was up at the top, but this transition here I've kind of worked on a little bit. So it goes from this really lovely soft grey up into this yellow, and the camera's not really picking it up, but this is really quite a nice, rich, warm lemon yellow. I'll try and take another photo and drop it in. So that the way all these colours are mixing into this neutral space, I quite like. Coming through the different areas, and that area of text just kind of bleeding through. I love the way that that text picks up this colour here, but the structure is difficult. Whether I will try and work with that, sometimes I quite like working with a difficult structure or design because it gives you a painting that feels a little bit on edge. So it's not always about totally resolving it so that everything is in expected places. So that's that one. This one feels muddly and a little bit pointless at the moment. I think perhaps it would be better off that way up, and then starting to see some nice gradations in there. But that's that one. It's a little bit lumpy. Lump here, lump here, lump here, lump here. 4 corners of lumps. But it's definitely got more richness to it than it was this morning. And what was interesting was at one point I pulled this drawing that I'd done a couple of weeks ago where I'd had all these soft greys and I'd done this smear of yellow, which is a kind of transparent yellow over the top, and just quite enjoyed that in the drawing. And that's one of the things that I brought into these paintings today, was this sort of translucent yellow colour here. So if we come across to this one, which was the one, funnily enough, that I kind of finished on. I work across all of them, but this one was one that I came back to towards the end of the day, and I think that there is starting to be a little more of interest in here. A couple of things that I just want to show you or just discuss that I think is interesting. These 3 marks here as a stripe that have been painted and then broken and then reiterated with the white and then reiterated again. The marks, the format are the same, but this kind of working over things and multiple versions of it, not trying to fill it in or complete to the edge, that's something that I think really helps. Other things that I like about this are just this graduation here. This graduation up from this dark through this yellow to this colour here. This is more of a glaze kind of pushed into the white spaces afterwards. So very often when I'm working, what I'm thinking of is this push-pull between light and dark, saturated and more desaturated neutral colours. So the pink here has become a little bit greyed down, it's acting more as a neutral, but also there are some really soft gradations here where I've worked over this dark space. So this dark space has got a kind of khaki green, it's got more of a deep dual forest green, it's got browns, it's got blues in it. So although it feels just like a single dark space, when you actually come close, it's got quite a lot of variation in it. And that's where I find having a messy palette can actually help, because you get those colour variations quite quick. So that is probably the one that's the most sickly. So let's just pull back and look at all of them together without tripping over my lights. So if we pull back, we can see that the structure still needs working. If I'm looking for some simplicity in the work, then it's not there yet. But again, this rebound between complexity and simplicity, pulling it in, pushing it back, that's something I'm always interested in. So there we go, that's the end of another day on these.